Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Virtual IMS User Group. Thank you for joining us. I'm Trevor Edel. I'm CEO of iTechEd Limited. We're a mainframe consultancy, analysis and technical authoring organisation. We're responsible for the content on the Virtual IMS website, and we produce newsletters. And if you've got colleagues who use Kix, we look after the virtual CICS user group as well. So let me run through the agenda for this meeting. As usual, most of the meeting will be taken up with a presentation, and today our guest presenter is Rosemary Galvan. She's IMS Tool Solutions Advisor with Rocket Software, and her talk is called Rethink the Way You Manage IMS. And a copy of the slides from this presentation will be on our website later today. And also on our website, if you missed any of our previous meetings, there's links to watch the whole sessions again, or to just look at the slides if that's what you want. That's all on the resources page. And you can find us at fundy.com/virtualims. Okay, following Rosemary's presentation and any questions you have for her, we'll move on to the latest IMS news and the latest IMS-related articles. Feedback request is there to remind me to ask you for your feedback about this virtual meeting, and then I'll give you the dates and times for the next couple of meetings. So that's the plan for this meeting. I'm anticipating that it will last around an hour. Anyway, as I just said, today's presentation is from Rosemary Galvan. Rosemary is an IMS tool solution advisor for Rocket Software. She's worked with IMS for over 30 years. Prior to joining Rocket Software, she spent 20 years as an IMS software consultant and an additional 15 years as an IMS DBA for several Fortune 500 companies. So, Rosemary, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us today. And what I'm going to do now is pass control of the meeting over to you. So let me do that now.
Okay.
Oops. You should have a little message on your screen.
Yep, I get it. And let me make sure, do you see the presentation?
Yes, that's all good then.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Trevor. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's listening. I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to share an hour here with us. And again, I've been at Rocket for about almost 4 years now, and I've had about 5 different titles. But my job responsibility has remained the same. I pretty much do first level problem determination for the IMS tools products. And in that capacity, I get a lot of questions about from customers such as yourself who are working with IMS and want to do something different with either how they image copy or reorg or manage their environment, different things that they're doing. So in this 4 years, I really have a perspective of what your peers are doing and what they'd like to do with IMS and the tools that they have, which is kind of the reason how the idea for this presentation came up. And so basically what I'm going to be talking about is how some of your peers are looking at changing the way they determine the health of their IMS database environment, how they do their reorganization, how to do reorgs and when to reorg. Looking at some of their manual processes and seeing how can they automate certain things. How do they standardize the utility JCL and build what they need to handle some of these changes in their procedures. And just how do they manage all the environmental data that they have to look at or are responsible for reviewing? As DBAs, you know, you've got database exceptions, all the statistical data about your databases, the reports from utilities, where and how is the best way to view all that data. So this is the kinds of things that in the next hour or so I'll be sharing with you. And so, and also how do the features and functions of our IMS database solution pack assist customers to do all these things. And the reason we're talking about that is that in the IMS Management Today, what's happened is, I'm sure you, just as your peers, have processes and procedures in place that were set up a long time ago. Maybe you had a problem and so you needed to do something a certain way. And we really don't take the time to go back and say, hey, is this process still the best way or the most efficient way, or is this still even a problem? And so we keep things the same until something in our environment changes. Either we have new requirements for availability or for standards, and so this is why we look to change things. But today, it says in today's modern world, but this has been happening back, as long as I can remember. Management is always concerned with saving money. How do you save? CPU, MIPS, time, effort, money. And so re-looking at how you handle IMS management of your database environment more efficiently and maybe changing some things is something that's a good thing to review. Because where we want to get to is a point where when you're looking at your IMS database environment, you have something like this. I don't want to see the world. I just want to know, tell me when something's wrong. Do I have databases that have a problem? Oh yes, I've got all the thousands of databases that I'm responsible for. There's just a handful that need to be reviewed. And then how do I quickly identify what those are? And the way I get to that is by understanding the health of my databases. And we do that by collecting all the statistical data. And as you're aware, so much data is generated from the utility executions. I remember when I was a DBA, I'd look at an output from an image copy and I'd say, we just killed a tree, because there's so much statistical data. And a lot of environments today, they have implemented some internally developed procedures that manually collect this data and analyze it. We used to, back in the day, we'd have SAS reports, people use Rex. They were putting data into CSV files for Excel spreadsheets. But what's happened, what I've seen in my time as first level PD, is more and more people want to get away from having to spend the time and the effort to manually collect this data and analyze it and support those internally developed procedures, because you want to utilize this expertise that you have someplace else. Why have them to continue to support these procedures? Maybe these people aren't around anymore, but again, even if they are, their time is better spent trying to help train the next gen DBAs. And there's really no need to actually continue to support these manual processes, because the tools that you own today, IBM IMS utilities, have the capability to automatically collect this data for you. We call the statistical data about the health of IMS databases database sensor data. So for the utilities that you run on a regular basis, things like image copy, pointer checker, when you run a reorg, or when you perform the FastPath equivalent utilities, you can set these up to automatically collect the statistical data for you and automatically evaluate it and proactively identify and notify you if you have database exceptions. And so I see more and more people wanting to take advantage of this capability rather than manually continue to do this through their internally grown processes. Some other things that you can do as far as collecting the data is, again, you can do it automatically when you execute your regularly scheduled utilities, or you can say, I know I have a problem now, so I want to collect and evaluate data right now about this database. So there's something called an on-demand collection and evaluation. Let's say you're scheduling these utilities maybe once a week or every other week, and you really want statistical data collected more frequently. Well, there's a scheduled data sensor collection that can be performed, and you can determine, how frequently you want the data collected and evaluated. And you can, there's flexibility around scheduling it, so you can schedule based on a time where you're not impacting production. You can use the product, Autonomics Director, to schedule this collection and evaluation, or you can use your external scheduler. So there's a lot of flexibility in how you can automate the collection and evaluation of statistical data to let you know how your databases are performing. With this evaluation, it's done on user-defined policies and thresholds. We send a lot of standards, out of the box, but everything is customizable. So you decide, what is something that's in error, or what's valid for your particular environment. And you can get this notification. The most popular is email and text now. People really like text notification. But, if you want a TSO message or WTR, those are still supported. But the key is, depending on the type of notification, it alerts you and tells you, hey, you need some action that needs to be performed against this database. And, the notification can be customizable not only in the type, but, do you want to know on all exceptions or just selected exceptions? The evaluation gives you recommendations for things like reorg. And it's simple, hey, this database has an exception, you need to reorg it. Yes or no. And so with this automation and this capability of collecting the sensor data and evaluation, what it's doing, it allows you to automate this ongoing database monitoring and maintenance tasks based on a detailed understanding of the current state of your IMS databases. So you're working smarter, not harder. Here's just an example of all the default policies that are available based on database type. But again, you can modify these and create new ones. So there's a lot of customization that's available through being able to monitor your databases. And then you've got, for every exception, there's some kind of recommended action. So sometimes, based on the exception, the recommendation is a reorg or an index build or simply just a notification. So the policies and the rules and thresholds give recommendations on actions that are required. So you always have that help, if you will, to let you know what needs to be done should a database go in exception. And then again, when you view the results of this exception, it's very easy to see right there, reorganization needed. If you want to see the details of the exception, you can expand that out. And then right there, it tells you in plain English, yes, it needs a reorg. There's no guesswork. So the exception that was encountered means that this database does need to be reorged. Now, one of the things that I've been talking a lot about right now is reorg. And the reason that reorg and collection of database statistics go hand in hand is, let's face it, that's why we're looking at the stats on the database. We're trying to figure out, does this database need a reorganization? Does it need some kind of structure change? And in the beginning, back when I was a DBA, the only options for reorganization were, traditional or classic, which was multi-step and online. And, the concept of an online reorg has been around for a very long time. And, when it was first available, everyone was under the impression, oh, only people that are high availability, really not, maybe financial institutions, those are the only ones that are looking at online reorganization. Well, again, in these almost 4 years that I've been working with as first level PD, you'll be surprised how many customers, how many of your peers are looking to switch from this offline multi-step reorg going to online reorganization. And that's because everyone seems to be in a situation where they need additional availability. I mean, I think every company must have a web interface, access to applications where they need, their business requires additional availability of their IMS data. And so we're seeing the shift from offline to online reorg based on, the needs for increased availability, and because they can, they can regularly schedule these, and they don't have to worry about looking at the stats, the database. They know, okay, we can reorg more frequently because it doesn't impact availability. Plus, we have other benefits that we can get. Because as you know, the outcome of an online reorganization is not just a reorganized database. You also have the ability to create a post-batch image copy that's been pointer checkered. So you've got, it's a valid, it's a batch image copy. And so we have people that have actually transitioned and moved towards running regular online reorganizations and not running regular batch execution or taking regular image copies, because, oh, I can now run an online reorg on a weekly basis and there's my image copy. So why do I need to run regular image copies? Because I've got my weekly image copy right there, which I wish I would have thought of that when I was a DBA, because that's brilliant. It's multitasking. Then we have other customers, they're going to online reorg because even though they were under the impression that they had to have a multi-step reorg to create an external unload file that was needed for download processing, but they realize now, oh, I can run an online reorg, and even though I'm reorging from a shadow, the live database to a shadow, I can still, at the end of this reorg, I'll have my post image copy, but I can have an option to create this unload file that I need for download processing. So we're seeing the shift of going to online reorganization because it gives them the ability to run it more frequently and get these other processes done at the same time. Batch image copy, as well as creating this external unload file. Unfortunately, that's the good news. But again, even though you're running a regularly scheduled online reorg that doesn't impact availability, if the reorg really truly isn't needed, you're burning a lot of unnecessary cycles. So that's kind of the the plus and minus of that. What I like to say is to reorg or not to reorg. That's the question. And one answer, though, is conditional reorg, because with the conditional reorg, you can schedule the job to be run, but the reorganization will actually only run if it's needed. The way conditional reorg works is there's an integrated sensor collection. So the data is collected, it's evaluated against the policies, and so you maintain your existing job schedule. The reorg is submitted, but it really is only going to execute if the reorganization is really needed. So in other words, if the database is not an exception and doesn't have that reorg needed flag on, then it doesn't need to be reorged. Now, the thing about it is we've got those customers that, oh, I can't use online reorg because remember, I'm multitasking and I got rid of all of my weekly batch image copies and I'm using conditional or online reorg to create my image copies. Now, if I go to conditional reorg, I'm going to have to go back and put that in. Well, actually, no. They are unaware that we actually have a control statement that's CR.IC always. And if you specify this keyword along with specifying conditional reorg, what this does is say, okay, I know my database is not an exception, and so it doesn't need a reorg, but I still want you to go ahead and create that batch image copy and do that pointer checker. So you can still have your weekly reorg job scheduled, add this control card, and what's going to happen is every week you will still get that batch image copy like you do today, but you won't burn those extra cycles to actually reorg the database if the database doesn't need a reorg. So if that's a reason why you didn't think you could use conditional reorg, that's not the case. Again, you know, some people take the opportunity to create an unload file for download processing when they're doing online reorg. So the thought is, oh my God, I can't do conditional reorg because now I'm not going to have this unload file, so now I've got to add a new job. Again, there's the control card that specifies, yes, you continue to run this regularly scheduled online reorg, but if I don't need to do the reorg, don't actually reorg the database, just create the external unload file that I need. And obviously, if I need both, I just include both of the control statements. So these are other things that, you know, if people weren't sure that they could use conditional reorg, they really can. Now, back to our question, to reorg or not to reorg. One answer to that question was conditional reorg. Another thing is something called active autonomics. And I have a lot of customers that are looking to do this. Let me take a few minutes to explain what this is. With autonomics, we have two flavors. Passive is, all right, a database is an exception. Just tell me that something is wrong, and I'll look at it and then I'll fix it. Active autonomics says, oh, something's wrong. I want you to go ahead. If you can fix it, go ahead and take some action and resolve the exception. And for the longest time, everyone seemed to only want to look at passive autonomics. It's like, I'm satisfied with that I'm notified I need to do something and I want to do it myself. I want that kind of control. But there's this big shift where people really want to start automating this and using active autonomics. I have a client that uses a phrase and I really like it. They call it, we have set up walk-away reorganization. In other words, everything is set up that it's automated. And they only get a notification if a database is an exception and it couldn't be automatically resolved. That's the only time they want to even look at IMS, is unless they have to do something. Everything else they want taken care of for them. And we're seeing actually this trend of being able, of people who want to set that up. And I wanted to show you a little bit about, on this exception here, this policy. And policy has all of the rules which are contain the thresholds on the criteria that determines whether or not database is an exception. And you've got 3 levels: critical, severe, and warning. And associated with every level is an action. So if you see here, if it's message, all you can get for now, for default, is you get a notification. If action is reorg, then that means you can get a notification, but it can be set up that it can take some kind of action. And so that's what customers are looking to do, is to go ahead and automatically not have regularly scheduled reorgs per se using conditional reorg, but just have everything set up so that if an exception triggers and it can be resolved with a reorg, the product automatically takes care of it. The other thing that you can do is you can customize like notification. If I say where it says summary of notification lists here, this is blank here. I could have a notification list here, and if I did, that would mean that every rule, if anything triggered, I would get a notification. But instead, like what this customer wanted, is they want only notification on select rules. So notice I have a notification here. So what this means is only for this particular critical rule, they would get a notification. And again, all of this is customizable. Another thing I wanted to point out about this policy is this rule. I have a customer that what this rule is, last reorg, is you can set up based on the number of days you trigger. Like I think by default it's 30, 60, and 90 days that you haven't reorg, you get an exception. And by default, it's set up just to tell you, hey, if I haven't had a reorg in 30 days, I want to get a notification. 30 days, 60 days, etc. What they want to do is just every 6 months, whether the database is needed or not, reorg, they want it reorged anyway. And so what they did was they took this rule, they changed the thresholds and the actions, and they made it so that that's what it would do. So that's another example of how you can automate, doing the reorganization process using our tool. So again, you can use what's out of the box. You can customize. You can modify your rule thresholds, policies, notifications, when you schedule this stuff. So you have a lot of flexibility on how you actively monitor your database environment. Now, we talked a lot about changing some control cards in your JCL for conditional reorg and things like that. I wanted to let you know that part of the database solution pack includes a new tool called IMS Admin Tool. And this tool provides a JCL generation capability. And it's really a new way of looking at how to generate JCL, and it's based on specific tasks. And what happens is you can generate JCL based on any of the IMS tools that you're licensed for. And your tools and the utilities and the functions are all registered when you do your setup at installation time. And there's base skeletons and variables that we provide, but of course, one size doesn't fit all, especially with JCL. So but you have the capability to modify the base skeletons or create your own. And but once it's set up, you're in a position to generate standardized JCL for your specific environment. And you do that by creating an object profile. An object profile defines your databases. The utility profile is the task that you want to perform, the type of utility you want to execute. And then a job profile combines the object profile, which is the databases, utility profile, which is the utility that you want to generate JCL for, and then you can generate the JCL. So you've got, again, we just talked about that. So here's an example of the object profile. And so you can set this up to create based on, like, in this case, a claims application. You can do it by DBRC groups or some other kind of specification. And here's your claims application. And you can expand and see what's included in this profile. But basically, the object profile tells the product, these are the databases that I'm going to build JCL for. These are the objects. And then I select, the function. So in this case, I've got a utility profile, and I'm going to select conditional reorg. And I'm going to use the template here, but I can include a template for some user function, user JCL that I might run. I can include that here as well. But anyway, so I select that. And then I go through, and when I create this, here's an example of the different functions. Remember, we talked about conditional reorg. I could set up conditional reorg that creates an image copy and an onload file, and it would include those, it would build JCL including those 2 control cards that I showed you earlier. But I wouldn't have to actually know them. I would just pick this, highlight this, and put that function over and create the utility profile, and it would know to create JCL with those specifications. And then the last step would be the job profile, and that's where I select the object profile, which is the databases, the utility functions, which would be the conditional reorg that I wanted, and then I would just build my JCL. And here it is. And so now I've got this JCL. I can execute it, or I can save it, or I could let Autonomics Director run it when it needs to. So I can easily create JCL. The beauty about using these profiles is, again, it does require some expertise as far as, changing the skeletons and setting them up for your environment. But an experienced person can set those up. And then the new next-gen DBAs can go through, select the functions, generate the JCL, and once it's generated, they can look at it and they can see, oh, I understand now what it's doing. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about is the viewing of data, exceptions, statistical data, utility reports, things like that. Of course, we have our standard ISPF interface that we know and love, but more and more, I'm seeing customers who want to transition to using the GUI interface. It's an alternative to ISPF interface, and they're wanting to use the GUI not so much for themselves, because I'm sure if you're like me, I'm perfectly satisfied and happy using the ISPF interface, but it's really, it's essential for the next gen staff, for their skills growth and for them to be immediately productive, is to be able to interface and use our utilities through the GUI console. And our console is the IBM Management Console for IMS and DB2. And it provides, a holistic view of your IMS databases from a single easy web interface. All of the functions from the new tool, IMS Admin Tool, are available in both ISPF Batch or through the Management Console. Everything that you can get from the Management Console is available on the other interfaces, except it just gives you a different view. Dynamic, interactive graphs and charts provide a better visual representation of things like your sensor data. There's just, there's limitations in the way ISPF can present the data to you. It's so much easier to look at when you're viewing data, to understand when you have trending or you have peaks and valleys, when you're looking at it graphically versus just numbers across and panels in a chart. And the Management Console really, it prepares the next gen IMS DBAs. They're more familiar with using a GUI than learning or working with ISPF. ISPF is just so foreign for them, but when they see the Management Console, they naturally gravitate to that. And it allows them again to do all of these different things, to look at reports and their resources. They get help, everything that they can access. It's ease of use. And this is just an example of how, when you're looking at things like numbers of databases, notice how here you can see trends much more easily. The data is just represented differently, and it's something that people are really starting to express interest in, looking at the data from the GUI. They can see so much more information can be displayed on a panel than is capable in through the ISPF panels. They also like that you have these tabs up here. So if you look at something here and you just tab over here, you can go and look at that information and go back and forth, instead of when you go through ISPF. I did a lab on using the Management Console, and I had next gen people, and they were just, oh, we hate the way in ISPF when you have to say equals X and you have to back out of things. Oh, this is so much easier looking at these tabs. And right away you could just tell they were looking at the data, and they seemed more interested in it. Things like this, being able to look at report output. Obviously there's SDSF or whatever job output or utility that you have, but from the GUI, things like being able to say, just look at today's reports with non-zero condition codes, selecting by a job number or name. If you told a DBA, a new DBA, oh, there was the image copy from the database, the claims database, had a problem last night. I fixed it, but I want you to take a look at it and see, if you can tell me what's wrong. They can find that output so much easier and faster using something like this than having to go through it and look at, find it through ISPF. And I think one of the reasons that people are really looking at using the GUI to access and utilize the data from, the utilities or sensor data, things like that, is because the future of the mainframe, and IMS specifically, really depends on companies like yourself and your ability to acquire and retain this next gen DBA staff. And it's, if they see you accessing your IMS utilities through a GUI versus ISPF, where do you think they will like to work? It's kind of like that old eye chart. You know, what is better, this on the right or this? This, looking up, or this? It's the same data, but for them to see you accessing it and utilizing it using the GUI, I think is going to be of interest more to them. And we're seeing that as more and more customers are gravitating and migrating to implementing and using the GUI. So I guess in summary, when I started our talk, I mentioned that I was going to be sharing you some things that I see with customers wanting to utilize more things like how they reorg and collecting statistical data using the GUI, things like that. And all of the functionality is available, and they have it in the IMS database solution pack. They just really hadn't thought about using it before, but now that they know they have that capability, they're starting to use it. So this solution provides just a tremendous amount of tools and functionality in maintaining and managing your IMS full function databases. You know, we've got that new IMS admin tool. I only showed you the ability to generate utility JCL, but it has a lot more capabilities. You know, we've got the high performance utilities. The solution uses sensor data, policies, and autonomics, conditional reorg, and autonomics. So if you have the IMS database solution pack and you hadn't considered any of these, utilizing any of these features or functions, maybe based on your environment, it might be something that you should look at, or if you don't have our solution, then and you're thinking about it, you know, if there's any questions, anything I can do to help you, just let us know. And that's kind of, if there's any questions, we can pause for a moment and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, okay. If anyone's got any questions, if they want to just type them into the box, and then I'll read them out for Rosemary. I'll give everyone a few moments to get themselves sorted out. Yeah, just waiting a second or two.
It's okay, I finished a little bit early. We're going to be wrapping up right in about an hour.
Yeah, no, that's always good to have a bit of time at the end. Okay, I can't see any questions coming in. What I will do is I'll move on then. Oh, hang on, there's something. Let's see. Yeah, Denise Jeffers says, hi, is there a way to invoke a proc? She said it's instead of generating JCL each time.
Yes, you can set up the skeletons to do that.
Okay, let's wait a few more seconds. So Denise says, thank you. Stephen George says, can I set up a rule that tells me to expand the RAA of HDAM-DB?
Yes.
Okay. Right. Any more questions then? Let's wait a second. See if any more come in. Right, yeah, no, I will move on then. Okay, yes, so Rosemary, let me thank you very much for today's presentation. Because we're a virtual user group, you can assume that we're giving you a virtual round of applause.
Thank you. And I do want to thank you as well, and to our audience. I really appreciate your time and, you know, just the privilege of your time. I know how busy you are. So thanks again.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. One more question, which I think I can answer. That's from Mark McComber, who says, where did you say the presentation will be posted? Well, it'll be on the Virtual IMS user group website. So that's fundy.com/virtual IMS, and that's all one word, virtual IMS. So if you go there, then you can find the resources page, and there'll be a copy of this presentation as a PDF, and there'll be a link to the whole session, which you can watch again. Okay, brilliant. Let me take control back.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Yes. Thanks again, then, Rosemary. That was really interesting. So, I always tell you about news, and yet again, there doesn't seem to have been any. But can do some articles. We've got machine learning with IMS data. That's by Akash Shah on Z Systems Developer Community. That was dated 21st of September. We've got DevOps and IMS, The Journey Continues. That's by Hayley Fung, again on Z Systems Developer Community, and that was on the 13th of September. And there's links to these articles or blogs on our website. Feedback requests then, you can email me your comments. My address is on screen, or you can use the Contact Us webpage and just let us know what you thought of today's session. Meeting dates. So, as you can see, on our next meeting is on the 4th of December, when Dennis Eichelberger, IT Specialist, IMS Support, Washington Systems Center with IBM, will be discussing pervasive encryption and IMS. And then in the new year, on the 5th of February, we've got IBM's Kevin Height, and he's going to be talking about IMS ODB. Yes. Can I ask whether we have any end users who would like to speak at one of these meetings about the issues and the opportunities they face using IMS or some aspect of IMS at their site? Again, if you can let me know if you'd be willing to speak, we'd like to encourage more end users just to present, so we can see what life's like at other IMS sites. Oh, and can I remind you that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the world of IMS and on the Virtual IMS User Group website by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and we've got a Virtual IMS group on LinkedIn. The URLs for all of these are, well, they're on the screen now, but they're actually on the homepage of the website, which is probably easier. And because it's social media, we do like likes. So if you go to our Facebook page, if you can like it, please, that would be brilliant. And if you're tweeting or Instagramming or anything, the hashtag to use is hashtag virtual IMS. And we'll see that. Okay, well, that's all for this meeting of the Virtual IMS User Group. Can I thank you all for attending? I must thank Fundy Software. They're the people who sponsor this user group. And I particularly want to thank Rosemary Galvan for today's presentation. So that's it. Thank you all very much for joining the meeting. And I look forward to seeing you next time on the 4th of December. So again, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.